Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive into something pretty interesting today.
Absolutely. Should be a fun one.
Yeah, we're going to tackle a classic puzzle today. It's the kind of thing you might even see pop up during a job interview.
Oh, yeah. Those brain teaser type questions, always a bit nerve-wracking.
Exactly. But that's why we're here, to break it down and make it a little less intimidating. So, ready to hear what it's all about?
Lay it on me.
Okay, so picture a big cube, right? Like a 10 by 10 by 10 cube. And it's made up of 1,000 tiny little cubes. Each one is just 1 by 1 by 1.
Gotcha. So like a big Rubik's Cube, but all one color.
Exactly. Now, imagine you dunk this whole giant cube into red paint. The whole thing gets coated.
Okay, I'm visualizing that. A giant red cube.
Now, here's the challenge. How many of those tiny little cubes end up with at least some red paint on them?
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Definitely makes you think.
Yeah, and there are actually a couple of really cool ways to solve this. One of them is, well, it kind of focuses on what's not painted.
Really? That's an interesting way to think about it, focusing on the negative space.
Exactly. So think about it. All the cubes on the outer layer, they're all going to be red, right? What's left over in the middle?
A smaller cube that's totally untouched by the paint.
Right. It would be an 8 by 8 cube.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going. So if we figure out how many cubes are in that inner cube, we know exactly how many are not painted.
Exactly. And how do we figure out how many cubes are in that smaller cube?
Well, it's length times width times height, right? So
Yeah.
8 times 8 times 8. That gives us 512.
512 unpainted cubes, but we started with 1,000, right?
So 1,000 minus 512
Yeah.
means 488 cubes must have some red paint on them. Huh, that's pretty neat.
Right. I love that approach. It's so simple once you see it. But there's another way to solve it, too. And this one tackles those painted cubes directly.
Okay, yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, so this time, instead of the whole cube at once, let's think about it as 6 separate faces, kind of like a giant die.
Oh, okay, breaking it down into smaller parts.
Exactly. So 2 of those faces are the full 10 by 10 size, right?
Right, so that's 100 little cubes per face times 2. That's 200 painted cubes right there.
Yep. What about the other face?
Well, and now 2 of them would be 10 by 8.
Right.
Because we've already counted that outer edge. So another 160 painted cubes there.
And last 2.
Those would be the 8 by 8 faces. So
Yep.
8 times 8 is 64. Times 2 gives us 128 more.
Okay, so adding all those up, 200 plus 160 plus 128. Wait a minute, it comes out to 488 again.
Huh. That is pretty amazing. 2 totally different ways of thinking about it, and they both lead to the same answer.
It just goes to show there are often multiple ways to solve a problem. And sometimes the less obvious approach is the most efficient, especially in, like a job interview situation.
For sure. If you get thrown a question like this, I think the most important thing is just to stay calm.
Definitely.
They want to see how you think, not necessarily if you get the answer right away. So talk through your logic, even if it seems messy at first.
And if you can, show them that you can come up with more than one way to approach the problem.
Exactly. It shows you're thinking creatively and flexibly.
And those are great skills to have no matter what job you're going for.
Absolutely.
So before we wrap things up, I think we should leave our listeners with a little something to ponder.
Oh, definitely. Got to give them something to chew on.
So what if we change things up a bit? Instead of a 10 by 10 by 10 cube, what if it was 12 by 12 by 12?
Ooh, okay, upping the stakes.
Would those same methods still work? Would they get the same answer? I'll let you all think about that one. You know how much we love to unpack tricky concepts, and today's is a real head-scratcher.
Oh yeah, this one's a classic. It's one of those problems that seems super simple on the surface.
But then it totally trips you up. And the best part is, it's not even about being good at math or anything.
It's about how our brains are wired, you know?
Yep.
We love to jump to conclusions.
We sure do. So, ready to put those assumptions to the test?
Let's do it.
All right. Buckle up, because we're about to hit the road. Literally. Picture this. You're on a road trip.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You're driving 60 miles, nice and easy, at 30 miles per hour.
All right, 60 miles, 30 miles per hour.
Pretty straightforward so far, right? Now, on the way back, you want to kick things up a notch and average 60 miles per hour for the whole trek.
Okay, so double the average speed for the round trip.
Exactly. So the question is, how fast do you need to drive on that return trip to hit that 60 mile per hour average? Think about it for a second. What's your gut telling you?
My gut says 90 miles per hour. It seems like that would balance things out, right?
Right. That's what most people think. It feels like a simple average. Like, oh,
Yeah.
30 there, 90 back, boom, 60.
Yeah. But like we said, our brains love to trick us.
They do. And this is a perfect example. So why isn't 90 miles per hour the right answer?
Because it's all about time. Let's break down that first leg of the trip. 60 miles at 30 miles an hour. How long did that take you?
2 hours.
2 hours exactly. Now, to average 60 miles per hour for the whole 120-mile round trip, how long do you have in total?
Well, 120 miles divided by 60 miles per hour. That's also 2 hours.
Aha. There's the catch. You've already used up your entire 2 hours on the first leg of the trip.
Oh, wow. So it doesn't even matter how fast I drive back?
Nope, you could break the sound barrier and it wouldn't change a thing. You simply don't have enough time to bring that average up to 60.
Mind blown. It's like a time paradox on wheels.
It really is. And this isn't just some random math problem. It's a powerful lesson about average speed. It's determined by the total time, not just the individual speeds.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like if you spend ages stuck in traffic, then speeding later doesn't really help your overall average much, right?
Exactly. And you know, this kind of problem actually comes up in job interviews all the time. It's a way for interviewers to see how you think on your feet.
Really? Like they'd actually throw this speed trap at you?
Oh, yeah, it's a classic. They want to see if you just blurt out the obvious answer or if you pause, analyze, and realize there's more to it.
So what do you do if you find yourself in that situation? Like you've fallen for the trap, but you want to show them you can still problem solve.
Well, the best thing you can do is just be honest and show your thought process. You could say something like, okay, I see where I went wrong. I didn't consider the total time for the round trip.
That shows you're willing to learn and adapt.
Right. Absolutely. Interviewers love to see that. It's not about always getting the right answer right away. It's about how you approach a challenge.
That's a really great point. It's kind of like in life, too. You know, it's not
Yeah.
always about being perfect. It's about being able to recognize when you might be making an assumption and then adjust your thinking.
Exactly. This problem is a great reminder to stop, think things through, and not just jump to conclusions. It's a skill that'll serve you well in any situation.
Absolutely. So next time you're faced with a problem that seems a little too easy, remember this speed trap. It might just be a sign to slow down and look a little deeper.
Great advice.
Ready for another deep dive? This one is a classic brain teaser you sent in the 12-ball puzzle.
Ooh, yeah, this is a good one.
We've got 12 balls.
Right.
One is different,
Okay.
and we have to use a balance scale to find it. The catch. We only get 3 weighings to figure out which ball is the odd ball
Yeah.
and whether it's heavier or lighter. No pressure, right?
Uh-huh, right. Well, these puzzles are great because they really make you think like a detective, you know? Logic, deduction, problem-solving skills.
Definitely. So where do we even start with something like this?
Well, the source material we're looking at suggests starting by dividing the 12 balls into 3 groups of 4.
Okay, makes sense.
So for that first weighing, we'll put a group of 4 on each side of the scale.
Makes sense to me. So what? We just see if one side's heavier.
Well, it's more than that. Think of it like you're in a job interview, and they ask you a really open-ended question. You wouldn't just start rambling, would you?
Oh, definitely not. You'd want to be structured and, make sure you're highlighting the right things.
Exactly, that first weighing. It's all about setting yourself up for success, just like giving a clear and concise answer in an interview. This lets us eliminate a bunch of possibilities right off the bat.
Okay, so if the scales balance on that first try, that's actually a good thing.
It is. It means our oddball is hiding in that group of 4 we didn't weigh.
Oh, I see.
Suddenly, we've gone from 12 suspects down to just 4.
And we still have 2 weighings to go.
Exactly. It's all about narrowing down the problem, right? Whether it's a puzzle or a complex project at work.
Right, right. Okay, so that's if the scale balances. But what if it doesn't balance on that first weighing? What happens then?
Then we know the oddball is on the scale.
Okay.
But now we have to figure out, is it heavier or is it lighter? And on which side?
Ooh, yeah, that gets tricky. Kind of like those interview questions where they ask about your biggest weakness.
Yeah, you have to acknowledge it, but also show how you're overcoming it.
Right.
So for our second weighing, we got to think strategically. The source we're looking at suggests taking 2 of the balls from the heavier side and comparing them against 2 others from that same group.
Hold on. We're ignoring the lighter side completely.
Yep. We're zeroing in on that group that gave us a clear signal. Like, in an interview, you want to focus on your strengths, your successes.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
We're doing the same thing here, focusing on the group that's giving us the most information.
This is really interesting. I'm starting to see how this puzzle really connects to all those skills they look for in job interviews. strategic thinking, problem solving. Okay, so we do that second weighing. We compare two of those balls from the heavier side. What next?
Well, there are a couple of possibilities here. What if those four balls just balance out perfectly?
Ooh, what does that tell us?
That tells us the odd ball is one of the two we didn't weigh from that heavier group.
Oh, okay.
And it has to be heavier because that whole side was heavier in the first place.
Right. It's like eliminating an answer on a multiple choice question.
Exactly. By process of elimination, we're getting closer to the truth.
Okay, I'm starting to feel like a detective here. But what if those four balls don't balance on that second weighing?
Well, then it gets even more interesting, doesn't it? Let's say those two on one side of the scale tip it down again.
So we know it's one of those two, and it's heavier.
You got it.
Got it.
But now think back to an interview. You get a tough question, you don't just give up.
Right.
You use what you do know to make the best decision.
I like that.
So we take those two suspect balls and weigh them against each other, and that's our final weighing. Whichever one is heavier, that's our oddball.
And if they balance.
The one we didn't put on the scale is our oddball.
Got it. Okay, so we've covered if the scale balances on that second weighing and what happens if it tips the same way as the first weighing. But there's one more possibility, right? What if the scale tips in the opposite direction on that second weighing?
Ah, you're thinking ahead. That's great. That's a whole other scenario we have to look at. It means the two balls we didn't weigh are actually heavier than the two we did.
Ooh, yeah, this is getting complex.
It is. And that's exactly what we'll explore in part 2 of our deep dive.
All right, listeners, are you ready for more? We'll be right back to unravel the rest of this puzzle and maybe even uncover a few more interview tips along the way.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. Now, where were we? Ah, yes, that cliffhanger. What happens if on that second, weighing the scale tips in the opposite direction?
It's a real twist. Like getting through a curveball question in an interview, you got to think on your feet.
Exactly. So just to recap that, first, weighing the scale tipped down on one side.
Right. It was heavier.
Okay, and then for the second weighing, we took two balls from that heavier side and weighed them against each other.
Yeah.
But this time the side that was originally lighter went down.
Exactly. It's like realizing you need to revise your initial answer in an interview, you know?
Right.
Sometimes that first impression isn't the whole picture.
Ah, that's a good point. So that means the oddball is one of the two we didn't weigh in that second round.
Right.
And it has to be lighter because its absence made that heavier side rise up.
You got it. So now for our third and final weighing, we take one of those suspect balls and weigh it against a known good ball one from that original group of four that balanced out.
Okay.
If they balance, then the unweighed suspect is our later oddball. And if they don't balance, then the one on the scale is the culprit.
Wow. It's amazing how with just a few weighings you can solve this whole mystery.
Right. And it's a good reminder that the process is just as important as the solution. Like in a job interview, you might not always know the exact right answer, but if you can show your problem-solving skills, that can be just as impressive.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about what happens if the scale balances on that first weighing, but what if it doesn't? That was the other big scenario we were looking at.
Mm-hmm. Right, because so far we've been assuming those first four balls we put on each side were equal, which let us eliminate a lot of possibilities quickly. But what if they weren't equal right from the start?
Ooh, yeah, that throws a whole new wrench in things.
It does. It's like walking into an interview and realizing you need to adjust your approach based on the interviewer, you know?
Whoa, tell me about it. Yeah, you got to be able to improvise sometimes.
Exactly. And the source we're looking at, it actually has a really clever strategy for this scenario too. So let's say the left side goes down on that first weighing.
Meaning it's heavier.
Right. We know the odd ball is somewhere within those 8 balls, but we need to be more specific.
Okay, so what do we do next?
For the second weighing, we're going to do something kind of unexpected. We're going to take 3 of the balls from that heavier side and swap them with 3 good balls from the lighter side.
Hold on. Back up. Why are we mixing the groups like that? It seems counterintuitive.
I know, right? It might seem strange, but this is going to give us a ton of information depending on what happens in the second weighing. Think of it like asking the interviewer a clarifying question. It might seem like you're going off topic, but you're actually getting valuable insights so you can give a better answer.
Okay, I'm listening. So we swapped 3 balls. What can happen now?
Well, there are 3 main possibilities. First, the scales might balance out perfectly on that second weighing.
What would that tell us?
Well, if they balance, it means the oddball is one of the three balls that were originally on the heavier side, the ones we swapped out. And we know it must be lighter because taking it away caused that heavier side to become balanced.
So it's like a hidden strength, something we didn't see at first.
Exactly. Okay, second possibility. What if the scale tips in the same direction as the first weighing?
So the heavier side stays heavier.
Yep, that means the oddball is one of the two balls on that heavier side that we didn't swap, and we know it must be heavier because it's keeping that side tipped down.
Right, okay. And the third possibility.
The third possibility is that the scale tips in the opposite direction. So the side that was lighter is now heavier.
So that must mean the oddball is one of the three that we swapped onto that side. And it must be heavier because it made that side go from lighter to heavier.
Exactly. It's all about analyzing those changes and figuring out what they mean.
Okay, so we've got these three scenarios. Each gives us a different clue about the oddball. This whole thing is making me think of those behavioral interview questions. You know, the ones where they ask you to describe a time you failed?
Oh, yeah.
You have to talk about the mistake honestly, but also focus on what you learned from it.
It's all about reframing things and finding the positive, right?
Exactly. So we've got our three scenarios. What's our winning strategy for that final weighing? How do we solve this thing once and for all?
Well, it all depends on which of those three scenarios happen. But no matter what, we're ready to make a decisive move and find that oddball.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, well then let's dive into that grand finale.
All right. We're back for the final showdown. Ready to find that oddball once and for all.
Let's do it. Let's recap those three scenarios we're facing after that ball swap in weighing number 2.
Okay, so scenario 1. The scale balanced out perfectly after the swap. So we know the oddball is one of the three that were on the heavier side originally, and it's a lighter ball.
Right. For our final weighing, we just take 2 of those suspect balls and weigh them against each other. If one side goes up, we found our lighter oddball. If they balance, the one we didn't weigh is the culprit.
It's like in an interview when you're choosing between 2 strong candidates. You have to really look at those little differences to make the final decision.
Great analogy. Okay, scenario number 2. The scale tipped the same way as the first weighing heavier side stayed heavier.
Which means the oddball is one of the 2 on that heavier side that didn't get swapped, and it's a heavier ball.
Exactly. For our last weighing, we just put those 2 suspect balls on the scale. Heavier one is our oddball. If they balance out, the one we didn't weigh is the heavier one.
It's like you're down to the final round of interviews. You know, you have to really show what makes you stand out from the other candidate.
Exactly. You got to highlight those strengths. All right, scenario 3. The scale flipped in the opposite direction. The lighter side became the heavier side.
Meaning the oddball's one of the 3 that got swapped onto that side, and it's a heavier ball.
Right. Just like the last scenario, we weigh 2 of those suspect balls against each other. Heavier one is the oddball. And if they balance, it's the one we left off the scale.
Wow, I can't believe we've covered every single possibility. We've mapped out all the paths to find that oddball.
And it all comes down to logic and deduction, right? Breaking down the problem, looking at the information, making smart decisions based on what we see.
Those skills are valuable in so many situations, not just solving puzzles, troubleshooting at work, making big decisions, even just trying to find your lost keys.
Absolutely. So next time you face a challenge, just think back to this puzzle. Take a breath, break it down into steps, and trust your ability to think it through.
Great advice. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of brain-bending puzzles and strategic thinking.
We had fun, didn't we?
We did. And who knows, maybe you'll use some of these puzzle-solving skills to ace your next interview.
Until next time, keep those minds sharp and never stop exploring.
Okay, so are you ready to dive into something that's both a classic brain teaser and a bit of a science lesson?
I'm always up for a challenge. What do we have?
All right, well, picture this. You're standing outside a room, no windows or anything, and in front of you, you've got 3 light switches.
Okay, I'm picturing it. 3 light switches. Got it.
And inside the room, there are 3 light bulbs. Each switch controls one of the bulbs. Easy enough so far, right?
Yeah, seems pretty straightforward.
But here's the catch. You have to figure out which switch is connected to which bulb. And you only get to go into the room once.
Oh, okay, that's where it gets tricky. You can flip the switches all you want, but once you open that door, that's it. You got to know which is which.
Exactly. So how do you do it? It sounds kind of impossible at first, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, how can you know for sure unless you can see what's happening inside the room?
Well, that's where the cleverness comes in. This isn't just a riddle, it's a little physics puzzle, too.
Ooh, now you've got me interested.
So the solution hinges on something pretty simple. Heat.
Heat. Hold on, are we talking about those old school incandescent light bulbs, the ones that got super hot?
You got it. Remember how they'd heat up when they were on?
Yeah.
It's all about the energy transformation.
Oh, right. They were converting electrical energy into light, but also a lot of heat.
Exactly. That heat is the key to solving our riddle.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going. So how do we use that heat to our advantage?
Well, here's how it works. The source material suggests a few simple steps.
All right, I'm all ears.
First, you flip on two of the switches, let's say switch A and switch B, just to make it easy.
So 2 switches are on. Okay, got it. What's next?
Leave them on for a few minutes, let those bulbs really warm up.
All right, a few minutes pass. Those bulbs are toasty. What then?
Okay, now comes the tricky part. You turn off switch B, leaving switch A on.
Okay, so 1 on, 1 off, and 1 we haven't touched at all. I'm getting goosebumps here. What happens now?
And now, the moment of truth. You open the door and go into the room.
Done and done. Okay, I'm in the room. What am I looking for?
Well, one bulb will be on, right? That's the easy one. It's connected to switch A, the one we left on.
Okay, 1 down, 2 to go, but they're both off now. How do I tell the difference?
Now, you got to channel your inner detective and feel the bulbs. One of them will still be warm. Even though it's off, it'll be warm because it was just on recently. That's the bulb connected to switch B.
Oh, that's brilliant. So the leftover heat is like a fingerprint. It tells you which bulb was recently turned off.
Exactly. And that just leaves the last bulb, the one that's cold and off. That's the one connected to switch C, the one we never touched.
Wow. That's so clever. You literally use the heat like a hidden clue to crack the code.
Right. It's a perfect example of how something as simple as heat, a basic physics concept, can help you solve a problem that seemed impossible.
It's a reminder that sometimes the answers are right in front of us. We just have to know where to look, or in this case, what to feel for.
You know, I think there's a really interesting takeaway here.
Oh, what's that?
It reminds me a lot of job interviews and how they often throw those curveball questions at you. You know, the ones that are designed to see how you think on your feet.
Oh, yeah, like those, how many golf balls can you fit in a school bus question.
Exactly. It's not always about getting the right answer. It's more about showing how you approach a problem, how you break it down, and if you can think outside the box a little bit. Just like with this light bulb riddle.
You're totally right. They want to see your thought process, your creativity, and how you handle a challenge. It's not always about having the perfect solution right away.
It's kind of like that saying, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, right? It's the thinking that gets you there.
Exactly. And sometimes the journey reveals some pretty unexpected solutions, just like using heat to solve our light bulb puzzle.
Absolutely. So let's recap. We solved this classic light bulb riddle by using a bit of thermodynamics. It was that residual heat, that energy signature, that gave us the final clue.
And what's really fascinating is that this principle isn't just for light bulbs. Think about it. Mechanics use it all the time to diagnose engine problems. Chefs rely on it for cooking. Even crime scene investigators use heat as a clue. It's everywhere.
It really is. But here's a question to leave our listeners pondering. What about with those newfangled LED light bulbs? They don't produce nearly as much heat as those old incandescent ones.
Oh, that's a good point. Would our clever solution still work?
Exactly. Would we need a new approach, a new way of thinking to crack the code? It makes you wonder how evolving technology changes the way we solve even the most classic puzzles.
It definitely does. Food for thought.
Food for thought indeed. You know how we do things here. You give us the challenge, and we take a deep dive.
That's right. No topic is too tricky.
And today's topic, well, let's just say you might encounter this one in a high-pressure situation, like a job interview.
Especially if you're aiming for those coveted spots in finance or tech.
You guys sent in a classic brain teaser. You know, the one, the bridge and flashlight problem?
Ah, yes, that one. Always a favorite.
It seems deceptively simple at first. Right? A group needs to get across a bridge at night, but there's only one flashlight.
Add in a time limit and the fact that the bridge can only hold 2 people at once.
Oh, and did I mention everyone walks at different speeds?
Right. Suddenly, it's not just about finding a solution. It's about finding the most efficient one.
Okay, so let's lay it all out there for our listeners who might not be familiar with this puzzle.
Absolutely. Let's set the scene. We've got 4 investment bankers.
Probably fresh out of a late-night meeting.
Definitely. They need to cross this bridge to get back, but it's pitch black, and they only have 1 flashlight.
Essential item for crossing. And to make matters worse, the bridge is old and rickety. It can only handle 2 people at a time.
And here's the kicker. They've got a hard deadline of 17 minutes to get everyone across.
Tick-tock.
each banker walks at a different pace, which really throws a wrench into things. We have the analyst, who's quick on their feet, taking just 1 minute to cross.
Then there's the associate, who can cross in 2 minutes.
The vice president is a bit slower, needing 5 minutes to cross. And lastly, we have the medical director, who takes a full 10 minutes.
So picture yourself in that interview room. You're presented with this scenario. What's going through your mind?
Well, the first instinct might be to just start adding up those crossing times, trying to get everyone across individually as fast as possible.
It seems logical, right? Get the
Right.
fastest person back and forth with the flashlight.
That's where the puzzle gets you. That approach leads to a lot of wasted time, and it's not the most efficient solution.
So how do you avoid falling into that trap? What's the key to cracking this one?
The real aha moment is realizing that minimizing the number of times someone has to walk back alone with the flashlight is crucial.
Makes sense. Every solo trip back is just eating up precious time.
And that's where that counterintuitive pairing comes in, sending the two slowest people across together.
That's what always throws me off. It seems like you'd want your speedster zipping back and forth.
I know, but think about it. If the analyst is constantly running back and forth, you're creating unnecessary trips. By pairing the slowest to the VP and the medical director, you ensure there's only one slow crossing.
I'm starting to see the light. Literally. So how would you explain this solution clearly in an interview setting? Really impress those interviewers.
First, you lay out the problem. You've got a time crunch and everyone walks at different speeds. Then you hit them with your strategy. Something like, the key here is minimizing back and forth trips with the flashlight. So the most efficient way is to have the two slowest people cross together, even though it might seem a little strange at first.
So you're demonstrating that you understand the core principle behind the solution, not just the steps.
Exactly. Then you can walk them through it. The analyst and associate cross first, that takes 2 minutes. Then the analyst zips back with the flashlight, 1 minute.
Okay, I'm following so far.
Next comes the crucial part. The VP and the medical director make their slow but steady journey across, 10 minutes.
Holding their breath the whole way.
The associate brings the flashlight back, 2 minutes. Finally, the analyst and associate cross again, another 2 minutes.
And that brings us to our 17-minute deadline. Problem solved.
Exactly. You've shown them you can think critically and communicate your solution effectively.
It's amazing how this puzzle can be tweaked and presented in different ways.
Absolutely. Sometimes you'll see it with the Beatles crossing Abbey Road or U2 trying to make it to a concert on time.
Right. The names and scenarios change, but the underlying logic remains the same.
Exactly. And that's what our listeners should take away from this. Don't get hung up on the surface details. The key is understanding that minimizing those return trips with the flashlight is the most efficient way to solve it.
So if you're ever faced with this puzzle in an interview, take a deep breath, explain your reasoning, and highlight that slowest link principle.
Show them you can analyze the problem strategically and articulate your solution clearly. That's what will truly set you apart.
This has been a great deep dive into a classic brain teaser. And for anyone out there facing a challenge, remember, sometimes the most obvious path isn't the fastest. Take a step back, analyze the situation, think outside the box. You might just surprise yourself with the solution.
And who knows? You might even impress a future employer along the way.
All right, so today we're going to dive into a riddle. It's one of those things that sounds really simple when you first hear it, but then it kind of messes with your head when you start thinking about the probabilities.
Yeah, it's a classic brain teaser.
Exactly. And, it's all about decisions. Those moments where you have to make a choice, and you're not always sure if you're picking the best option.
Like in a job interview?
Oh, especially in a job interview.
I mean, that's already a pressure cooker situation.
Right. You're trying to impress, you're trying to show them you're the best candidate, and then they hit you with this.
This what? This curveball?
Yeah, picture this. You're in the hot seat, they're about to tell you if you got the job or not, but instead they put 3 envelopes in front of you.
Okay, I'm listening.
They tell you, one of these envelopes has the job offer.
Ooh, the golden ticket.
Exactly. The other 2 are rejection letters, so you got to pick an envelope.
Sounds easy enough so far.
Right. But here's the twist. After you pick, say you pick envelope number 1, the interviewer opens one of the other envelopes, let's say number 3, and shows you it's a rejection.
Oh, so they're messing with me now.
Totally. And then they offer you a choice, stick with your original envelope or switch to the other unopened one.
So the big question is, should you switch?
That's the riddle. And it's tougher than it looks because at first glance you might think the odds are 50-50.
2 envelopes left, one has to be the winner, right?
That's what your gut tells you. But probability is a sneaky little devil. It really is. let's break down why that intuition is wrong.
Yeah, walk me through this. I need to know what to do if I'm ever in this situation.
All right, so back to the beginning. When you first pick an envelope, what are the chances you got the offer?
Well, there are 3 envelopes, so 1 in 3 chance, right?
Exactly 33.3% roughly.
Okay. And that means the other 2 envelopes together have a 2/3 chance of hiding the offer.
Exactly 66.7%. And that's where the interviewer's little trick comes in.
By revealing a rejection, they change the game. Not exactly. They don't change the overall probabilities, but they concentrate them. Think about it like a pie chart.
Ooh, I like visuals.
Yeah.
Okay, so the whole pie is the 100% probability.
Right at the start, your chosen envelope has a slice of that pie, 33.3%, and the other 2 envelopes share the bigger slice, 66.7%.
But then the interviewer takes away one of those envelopes from the bigger slice and shows it's empty.
They don't change the size of the pie, they just move that 66.7% chunk all onto the 1 remaining envelope.
So by switching, I'm basically saying I want that whole bigger slice instead of my measly little original slice.
Exactly. You double your chances of getting the offer.
Wow, so it's not just a random 50-50 choice.
Nope. It's about understanding how new information shifts the probabilities.
I gotta say, this really messes with my head because it feels counterintuitive.
It does, and that's why this riddle's so popular.
So in a job interview, if they pull this envelope trick, I'm switching no question.
That's the statistically smart move.
But it makes you wonder, how often do we miss out on better options in life just because we cling to our first choice?
That's a great question to ponder, and it's not just about job offers. This applies to all sorts of decisions we make.
New information changes the game. And sometimes we got to be willing to switch tracks, even if it feels a little scary.
Absolutely. It's about being open to reassessing our choices in light of new evidence.
Food for thought, for sure. Thanks for breaking this down. I feel like I learned something truly valuable today.
You're welcome. It's always fun to explore these probability puzzles.
And who knows, maybe one day this knowledge will help me land my dream job.
You never know. Now you'll be ready if they hit you with the envelope riddle in the interview.
Exactly. I'll be prepared to make the switch, and hopefully that leads me to the offer letter.
Best of luck in your future interviews.
Thanks, too. I'll need it. All right, so are you ready to, completely rethink how you approach problems? Imagine, okay, you're in this high-stakes interview.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And the hiring manager, they're like, all right, here's a curveball for you.
Uh-huh.
They give you these 2 buckets, right?
Okay.
And you got to pick a black ball out of one of them.
Classic interview scenario.
Exactly. It sounds so simple at first, right?
Totally.
But here's the catch.
Okay.
There's 100 balls total,
Mm-hmm.
50 black, 50 white,
Okay.
and you get to decide how they're split between the buckets.
Right.
You pick a black ball,
Yep.
boom, you get the job.
You're hired.
So how would you, approach this? Think like someone who's, trying to really impress with their problem-solving skills.
Well, I mean, wouldn't you just split them evenly, like 50-50?
Right, that's exactly what I thought, too.
Yeah.
It seems fair,
Makes sense.
logical,
Uh-huh.
but that's kind of where our intuition can, trip us up.
Totally, yeah. They're looking for you to go deeper, right?
Yeah.
They want to see that you can, analyze the situation.
Right.
The key here is that there's 2 steps to this process, right? First, you randomly pick a bucket,
Right.
and then you randomly pick a ball from that bucket.
Yeah.
That second step, that changes everything.
So what's the strategy then?
Mm-hmm.
What's the thing that's going to make the interviewer be like, whoa, okay, we got to hire this person?
Okay, so think about this. What if you put 1 black ball in 1 bucket
Okay.
and all the other 99 balls in the other bucket?
Wait, really? That seems so counterintuitive, though.
Right.
Wouldn't that actually make it less likely that I pick a black ball?
That's where the beauty of probability comes in, right?
Yeah.
So let's break it down a little bit.
All right, I'm all ears, lay it on me.
Okay, so you have a 50-50 chance of picking the bucket with that single black ball.
Okay.
If you pick that one, you're guaranteed to win. You got the job.
Oh.
But then you also have a 50-50 chance of picking the bucket with 99 balls.
Right.
Now, in that bucket, the odds of picking a black ball are slightly less than 50-50
Oh.
because there are fewer black balls
Right.
than white balls.
Yeah, so it's like we're weighting the probabilities then, right?
Exactly, yeah. You're making one a sure thing and the other one is, slightly less favorable.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it now.
So now imagine you're explaining this to the interviewer, right? You're like, okay, so while each bucket has an equal chance of being chosen by strategically, unbalancing the buckets,
Yeah.
We create a situation where one bucket is guaranteed success, and when we combine the probabilities, we get a much higher overall chance of picking a black ball.
That sounds pretty impressive, I gotta say, but like, what's the actual percentage increase we're talking about here?
So, with this approach, your overall chance of picking a black ball goes to a little over 74%.
74. Wow, that's way higher than the 50 we started with.
Exactly, and that's a big jump, and it really illustrates the power of, really understanding probability.
Yeah, I'm definitely starting to see how important that is.
Right, because the obvious answer is not always the best, and that's true for, so much more than just this interview puzzle.
Hmm.
Think about it, like in your work, how often do you have a problem where the traditional solution, it might not be the most effective one?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So this way of, approaching problems where you're challenging the assumptions, you're exploring the unconventional solutions, that can be really, really valuable.
Definitely, this whole deep dive has really like opened my eyes to how tricky probability can be.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, like, where else in life are we just, settling for the obvious solution
Mm-hmm.
when maybe a little creative thinking could, unlock something way better?
Yeah.
It's something I'm definitely gonna be thinking about.
Yeah, it's worth considering for
Yeah.
sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling something I know a lot of you are thinking about, how to really nail those interview questions.
Always a hot topic.
But here's the twist. We're going to start with something that seems totally random. We're talking about a math problem, and get this, it's all about clock angles.
Clock angles?
Yep, clock angles. Sounds a little weird, right?
Definitely unexpected.
I know, but trust me, there's a method to the madness. We're going to use this clock problem to uncover some seriously helpful strategies for absolutely crushing it in your next interview. So, ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
All right, so picture this. The problem asks, what's the angle between the hour and minute hand at 3.5?
Okay, I can visualize that.
And the solution that we've got here walks us through all the steps, like how to figure out exactly where the hands are pointing. Like the minute hand's obviously at the 3, but the hour hand, that's a little trickier.
Yeah, it's not pointing directly at the 3, right?
Exactly. It's moved a quarter of the way between the 3 and the 4 because it's 15 minutes past the hour. Then you've got to calculate all those degrees, and in the end, you get your answer a nice, neat 7.5 degrees.
Okay, so we've got our answer. What's the big deal?
Well, here's the thing. The real magic isn't in that 7.5 degrees. It's all about the process, the journey of getting to that answer. And that's where the connection to interviews comes in.
Interesting. I'm starting to see it.
Right? Think about it. When you're solving a math problem, like this clock conundrum, what are you actually doing? You're breaking down a complex challenge into smaller, manageable parts, figuring out what rules and concepts apply, and then you got to explain how you got to your solution in a clear, logical way.
That's true. It's not enough to just scribble down the answer. You need to show your work, demonstrate that you understand the underlying principles.
Exactly. And it's the exact same thing in an interview. You got to break down the question, figure out what they're really asking, apply your knowledge and experience, and then the key, you've got to communicate that process clearly to the interviewer. It's not enough to just have the right answer in your head. You got to show them how you got there.
I see what you mean. It's about showcasing your thought process, your problem-solving skills, right?
Exactly. So, like with this clock problem, you wouldn't just blurt out 7.5 degrees in an interview, would you?
No, definitely not. That wouldn't tell the interviewer much, would it?
Nope. Instead, you'd walk them through your reasoning. Like, okay, the minute hand's at the 3, but the hour hand is moved a quarter of the way between the 3 and the 4 because it's 3.15. There are 30 degrees between each number on the clock, so, you'd break it down step by step.
Right. You'd be demonstrating your understanding of the concepts, not just reciting a memorized answer.
And that's impressive.
Yeah.
Because it shows you can think critically, solve problems, and communicate effectively, which are like the holy grail of skills employers are looking for.
Right. Absolutely. It goes way beyond just technical questions, too. Think about behavioral questions, those tricky ones like, tell me about a time you failed.
Ooh, yeah, those can be tough.
They are. But the same principle applies. Instead of just giving a brief anecdote, you want to walk the interviewer through your thought process at the time. Like, what were your goals? What decisions did you make? What factors did you consider? And most importantly, what did you learn from the experience?
So instead of just saying, I messed up, you'd actually break down how you approached the situation, the actions you took, the consequences, and the lessons learned. You'd essentially be showing your work, just like with the clock problem.
Precisely. You'd be demonstrating self-awareness, analytical skills, and a growth mindset, which are all super valuable qualities.
This is blowing my mind. Who knew a simple clock problem could hold so many secrets to interview success?
It's all about recognizing the underlying principles and applying them to different situations.
So as we wrap things up here, I want to leave you with something to ponder. What's a seemingly simple problem or skill in your life that could actually be a secret training ground for nailing those interview questions?
Ooh, I like that.
Maybe it's explaining a complicated concept to a friend, teaching someone a new recipe, or even navigating a tricky route on a road trip. Anything that involves breaking down a challenge, applying your knowledge, and communicating clearly. Take a moment to reflect on that, and I bet you'll uncover some hidden strengths that you can use to really shine in your next interview.
You might surprise yourself with what you discover.
That's right. So go out there, analyze those clocks, and rock those interviews. All right, so picture this. You're in a job interview, right? And the interviewer, just out of nowhere, hits you with this question. You're in a room. And the room has, let's say, a 10-foot ceiling. How many quarters? Like, how many quarters, like the coins, would you need to stack to reach the ceiling? Throws you off, right? Kind of quirky.
Yeah, it's a classic.
It is a classic. You know, we've actually got this little snippet of text here. Somebody sent this in, and yeah, we thought we'd take a deep dive into it today, see what we can learn.
Sounds good.
I mean, on the surface, it seems simple enough, but, you know, there might be more to it than meets the eye. Always is with these things.
Definitely.
So, like, just breaking down the problem itself, the source mentions this 10-foot ceiling, right?
Right.
And it also states that 12 quarters stacked on top of each other make up 1 inch.
Okay.
So using that information, the source kind of quickly calculates that you'd need 1,440 quarters
Wow.
to reach that ceiling.
Well, the source actually breaks it down pretty well, like 12 quarters per inch multiplied by 12 inches in a foot, and then all of that times 10 feet.
Yeah. No, they lay it out really, really clearly.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's impressive how quickly they kind of get to the answer, but I'm also wondering, like, are we assuming perfectly stacked quarters here? I mean, in reality, wouldn't the stack, like, get a bit wobbly, especially as you get higher and higher?
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's a great point. In an interview, you definitely want to acknowledge those assumptions, even with a problem that seems this simple. Like, you could say something like, assuming ideal conditions.
Right.
With perfectly stacked quarters, yeah, the calculation gets you to 1440. But then you could add, however, in a real-world scenario, things aren't perfect, right?
Of course.
You'd have to think about variations in the quarters themselves. I mean, are they all exactly the same thickness? Probably not. And then, like you said, imperfections in stacking, all those things would affect the final number.
You'd probably knock the whole thing over before you even got halfway, let's be honest.
Yeah, probably.
So it's like, it's not just about getting the right answer, is it?
No, not at all.
It's more about how you think about the problem, how you approach it.
Exactly.
You're letting the interviewer kind of see, like, how your mind works, what's going on in there.
Yeah, and that's a really good point to bring up because it brings us to something else that's important. Stability.
Ah, yes.
I mean, the taller the stack of quarters gets, the less stable the whole thing becomes. It's just basic physics. And you could even, I don't know, maybe bring up the concept of the angle of repose. You know what I mean?
Refresh my memory.
It's basically the steepest angle that you can pile up, like any material before it starts to collapse, like, sand or gravel or whatever.
Why not? That's right.
And that's another way to impress in an interview, showing that you can connect a simple problem like this to broader scientific principles.
Suddenly we're talking about physics. It's not just about stacking quarters anymore.
Right. And, you could even use personal anecdotes to illustrate your point, too.
Oh, for sure. I tried to build a block tower with my niece once. It was a disaster.
That's perfect. See, you're already thinking like an interviewee. You're making it relatable. You're showing your personality.
Yeah, let's not dwell on that block tower incident, though. I think my ego's recovered. But, okay, back to these quarters. 1,440 quarters? That's a lot. Where would you even get that many quarters?
Good luck finding those.
And let's say you did find them. How long would it take you to actually stack them all?
Oh, ages. It would take forever.
And then, like, wouldn't they be incredibly heavy? I mean, have you ever held, like, a big roll of quarters?
Oh, yeah, they're surprisingly dense.
They are.
Yeah, I bet you could even calculate the total weight of that quarter stack. And then you could think about, could the floor even support that much weight?
Whoa, hold on. Now we're talking about structural engineering. I'm starting to get worried about the structural integrity of of our imaginary interview room here. We don't want the whole building coming down.
Exactly. You see how this simple question can lead to all these different avenues.
It's amazing. It's amazing. We've gone from like basic arithmetic to physics to worrying about the floor collapsing.
And that's what makes it such a good interview question, I think.
Oh, for sure.
It's not about the answer, it's about the thought process.
Yeah.
You know, so you've got your core calculation, you've got your assumptions, you've got your real world considerations. You even got a bit of physics thrown in there.
We went above and beyond.
We did. But then you could even go further, you know? What if the ceiling was higher, like 20 feet? Or what if we used dimes instead of quarters? Or like, what other everyday objects could we stack to reach that 10-foot mark? And then what would those calculations look like?
Mind blown.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about pushing the boundaries of the problem and showing that you can apply that same like logical thinking to all sorts of different situations. So yeah, to sum up, if you ever find yourself facing this quarter stacking conundrum in an interview, don't just panic and blurt out the first number that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just about the numbers. It's about showing off your analytical skills, your problem-solving abilities, and your ability to think, you know, outside the box.
And maybe even a little bit of physics knowledge, too.
Exactly. You might
Yeah.
just wow them with your in-depth understanding of the angle of repose.
I'll never see it coming.
They won't. All right. I hope you learned something.
Yeah, me too.
You know how this works. We take a seemingly simple question and, well, we dive deep. That's right. So today's question is one that I'm sure you've heard before and maybe even think you know the answer to already.
I'm sure.
But I guarantee there's more to it than meets the eye. So the question is, why are manhole covers round? We've got some source material here that gives a few possible answers.
Yeah, there are a few.
We're going to break them all down.
Right, we'll look at all of them.
Yeah. So first things first, the source mentions the most common explanation. Round covers can't fall through the opening unlike square or rectangular ones. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's a safety thing.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want that heavy
Right.
thing falling down into
Oh my gosh.
the sewer. It's all about the geometry, really.
So from a geometry standpoint,
Mhm.
why is the circle the ideal shape here? Why not a triangle or pentagon or any other shape for that matter?
Well, think about it this way. A circle has a constant diameter, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So no matter how you turn it, how you rotate it, its width is always the same. Squares, rectangles, triangles, they all have varying widths.
So they could potentially slip through.
Exactly. If you tilt them just right, they can slip through an opening, even if that opening is the same width as their widest point.
Okay, so with a circular opening and a circular cover, it's physically impossible for the cover to fall in no matter what.
That's right.
That's pretty clever.
Simple but effective.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
But our source goes on to mention some other reasons for this design choice beyond just the safety aspect.
Right. Yeah.
What else is there?
Well, practicality is a big one.
Okay.
Think about moving these things around. You got to transport them, install them, you know.
Yeah.
Rolling a circular cover is way easier than trying to lug around a square or rectangular one. Have you ever tried to roll a square?
I mean, I guess not.
Doesn't really work.
We don't work very well, no.
No, not at all.
So the circle is just the more efficient shape,
Yeah.
less material, easier to handle, almost elegant in a way.
I think so, yeah. And that elegance extends to the cost effectiveness, too. Circles, they enclose the most area with the least perimeter. That means you need less material to make a round cover compared to, say, a square one covering the same size hole.
So it's a win-win-win. Safer, more practical, and more cost-effective. Who knew there was so much to consider when it comes to manhole covers?
It's a great example of how good design often involves finding solutions that work on multiple levels. It's not just about one thing.
Right.
Often, you know, engineers start with a set of constraints, like in this case, preventing the cover from falling in, and then they explore different shapes to find the optimal solution.
And for manhole covers, the circle just happens to be the clear winner. It's amazing how such a seemingly simple object is actually the result of some pretty clever thinking.
Absolutely.
And it really highlights the importance of considering all the angles, looking at things from different perspectives. I mean, can you imagine the lawsuits if cities were constantly dealing with falling manhole covers?
It would be a mess.
It would be.
Sure.
So I think the next time we all see a manhole cover, we should take a moment to appreciate the elegant simplicity of its design.
I agree. Don't take it for granted.
Exactly. There's more to it than meets the eye. And maybe, just maybe, it'll make us start looking at other everyday objects and wonder, What other hidden design complexities have I never even considered before?
There you go.
That's something to think about.
Thank you watching our Brain Teasers interview questions and answers, and I hope these videos have helped you better understand how to approach brain teasers in your investment banking interviews. Remember, it's not always about getting the right answer, but demonstrating how you think. Interviewers want to see your problem-solving process, your ability to handle pressure, and your logical reasoning. If you found this series helpful, please don't forget to like this video and share it with anyone else who might be preparing for investment banking interviews. And most importantly, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Analyst Interview, for more helpful content like this. I'll be posting new videos regularly, covering everything from technical interview questions to behavioral questions and more. You can find links to all the brain teaser questions we covered in this series, as well as other helpful resources, in the description below. Thanks again for watching, and good luck with your interview prep. We will see you in the next video. Keep learning, and you can also support on Buy Me a Coffee, link below given in description.